So the next talk is about securing the Android Bluetooth by Xuan and Rishika and Matt. Enjoy the talk.
Can people hear me? Okay, this almost feels like I'm in a film fair and all the light was on me. And I'm matching the outfit of the theme here. If anyone didn't notice, hello everyone, my name is Rishika. I'm the TPM for the Android Red team. And I have with me here Matt, who is our senior offensive security engineer, and Xuan, who is the Android Red team manager. Before we get into the technical details, we'll talk about who we are and what we do. So we are an Android Red team, which is part of an overall Android privacy and security team. We do a lot of fun stuff. We hack for good. Our core mission is to protect the Android ecosystem through offensive security. So we develop exploits, we develop some fuzzings, we do some automation tools, like I think everybody is talking about AI. I heard some good talks about AI. We are also trying, not there yet. So in terms of how we want to cover, is we try and do a lot of offensive security work on Android and Pixel devices. There is some additional areas which we are covering these days, like watches and other devices, but not everything is covered as part of the full scope. This is kind of an engagement model. We have various engagements all year round, and we try to work with what are the key trends in the market, what is happening in the world, how do we pick up on what are actually attackers and hackers trying to hack. So why don't we do before them? For today's agenda, we will be talking about overall Bluetooth protocol stack, threat modeling for Bluetooth, and then we will be covering some methodologies for what are the different code manual reviews and fuzzing and what other methodologies we use in the team. And then we will be covering 2 RC bugs for which will be covered by Matt, and then we'll be talking about how we developed the exploit and how maybe you can learn something from there. In the end, we'll be talking about some of the current mitigation and improvements which we have been doing with the Bluetooth team. So I guess a lot of people may here already know, but I want to just emphasize a little bit on why Bluetooth. Bluetooth is probably one of the best features developed by mobile or used in your mobile. We have your phone, your watch, your IoT, even cars, everything is connected via Bluetooth these days, which makes it even more interesting attack vector for the hackers. We generally see a lot of VRP bugs coming in the area to us, and while reviewing what we had for the last year, this is one of the top targets. The other additional piece with Bluetooth is that the specs is really complex, and there is like 1,000 pages of specs you have to go through, which makes it really a potential area where you can have some flaws. It also comes with like the system level privilege. So if someone really attacks it, then they can make like a big damage. And last but not the least is not just like it requires a proximity. You can do a lot of remote code execution attacks where you would not even know that you're getting attacked, but things happen. With that, I'm going to pass on to Xuan to talk about the attacker view and threat modeling.
Thank you, Rishika. Well, I'll hide my diagram first. Questions. Has anybody here worked on security, worked on a feature of Bluetooth or developed a Bluetooth product? Okay, I see no one. So that makes me more comfortable showing my diagram. So this is, I call it attacker's view because it's not super accurate about the stack itself. And in some cases, it doesn't really reflect the real case in the world, like how it works from developer's view. However, I think it's good enough for me to explain how we look into these areas. So on the left side, you see we have 3 different, I call it security domains. And for our focus, we have a small team, and we only have a limited time of engagement. So we want to focus our effort to the most promising areas and most impactful areas. So in this case, we focus on the blue box, which is the Bluetooth stack in the Android ecosystem. It's open sourced in the AOSP project, and it runs inside of a privileged process because it needs to handle some of the special operations. For example, you connect a USB Bluetooth keyboard, right? It needs to be able to enter the keys, right? So there are other areas, for example, apps will not cover just because most of apps are not untrusted, so they'll have permissions to prevent them from attacks. And below that is vendor partitions. They have vendor-specific bits. We might not have source code. And there's also even lower firmware side. We don't have source code. Of course, those are also interesting targets. It's just for the sake of time, let's just limit ourselves to the open source part in the system partition. And even with just that block, if you expand it, there's still a lot of things packed in these areas. And, excuse me. So we still cannot cover everything here. So let's continue scoping down our project. So in this case, we want to focus on two things. First is a pre-authentication component, any component that can be reached without authentication or without pairing. That's our first priority. However, we do want to cover some of the post-authentication protocols just because how easy one can confuse users to connect their device with a Bluetooth device. I'm not sure if you run into this situation. If you try to use your phone and pair here, you'll probably see a long list of Bluetooth devices. And at least that's what I saw when I work at office. And it's very easy to trick users to pair into a malicious device if there's no confirmations on the device side. So that's why we also want to cover the post-authentication components as much as we can. That being said, what's our threat model in this case? And we want to focus on the remote attack surfaces. So there are two ways. One is that we have legit Bluetooth device, but somehow attacker can get in the middle of the connections. The other way is, excuse me, the attacker has a malicious device. They try to trick the user either to pair to it or directly send in packets. And by doing that, they're hoping to get denial of service, of course, information disclosure, and even higher code executions inside of the Bluetooth privilege process. And from there, see if we can escape the process to get a bigger attack, bigger damage. And as I mentioned, pre-pairing and post-pairing attacks are considered. By the end of our engagement, which lasts 2 months, we've discovered multiple critical and high vulnerabilities. And as always, we report all the issues. Okay, we report all the issues to the Bluetooth feature teams. We go through the Android security pipeline, make sure that they are delivered to the end user's hand. And when we do this engagement, one thing I want to highlight here is that manual code review is still our main method because it has discovered very, very hard to find issues using other methods. And one thing we experimented, this is actually an early engagement happened like probably 2 years ago. And the team was still collecting our tools. And we were experimenting static analysis, though we tried CLE for symbolic executions. And that also found some interesting bugs, make CLE one of our tools in our toolbox. Lastly is while we are working on finding bugs, we're also feeding back to the communities by improving the tools that open sourced or other security communities are using, like CodeQL, Ubertools, Wireshark, Scappy, and Frida. We have upstreamed some of our fixes to these tools to help others use the tools. Well, before we jump into the bugs, let's talk about how we did our work. As I mentioned, manual code review is always our top one choice because right now it's still the most effective way to discover high complexity, impactful bugs. In our engagement, we have discovered about half of the issues by manual code reviews. and including the 2 bugs we're going to demonstrate today. And the focus is that you want to try to look into the area hard to automate. For example, logic bugs. The end-to-end scenarios that involve many components makes like fuzzing very inefficient. All risk conditions or other situations, they're very hard to be discovered by fuzzing. And of course, the limitations are well known, right? You need the first domain knowledge. Bluetooth is a big area. Before the team jumped in engagement, none of us know Bluetooth a lot. Even now, I still don't know Bluetooth a lot. And also, it's a one-time effort. We cannot reuse our effort after the feature team iterates through their code. That means we have to do it again if we want to do. It's not scalable. We only have a limited number of people, and look into this one. That's really limit our efforts. Because of that, the second tool that we used or utilized is dynamic analysis, which is basically fuzzing. And this is very scalable, long-lasting effect. We can use that to discover new issues, but it's also very good for regression detections, as long as we have our fuzzers integrated into Google's continuous integration pipeline into our automated fuzzing framework. We have created fuzzers targeting different areas. The way that we did fuzzing in Bluetooth stack is we try to target individual stack, not treat it as a whole, just for efficiency. And also for scalabilities, all the fuzzers are able to run either on the physical devices or on the Linux host environment. If you develop in Android, you know that the word host, we use that to represent the Linux environment that you do the development. Because of that, we can just simply run our fuzzers on our cloud-based fuzzing infrastructure without any physical hardware. That greatly improved our throughput of fuzzing. There's also some existing fuzzers. We just improve them, and also by converting them into host-based fuzzing as well. Right now, even right now, all the fuzzers are still running continuously in Google's internal fuzzing structure. When you talk about fuzzing, you have to talk about the coverage. Excuse me. So here is a brief overview of how much coverage we get for each component. You see the number 50%, 60%. There's a very interesting observation is most of the components are in the middle of the stack. That means it handles both input and output, right? And for us, we only care input. Output, that there's no security problem because it doesn't handle malicious input. So from that perspective, 50%, 60% is pretty much already get the maximum of the lines, source code lines. However, line coverage is not always accurate. There's a lot of evidence showing that even if you have 100% line coverage, there's still a lot missing from the fuzzing, so there's still room to improve. Anyway, so with the fuzzing that we added, here are the discoveries we found in each component. Some of the issues are actually very minor issues, like null boundary reference. This is fuzzing. It's not like you do manual review. You cannot choose, like, okay, which issue you want to report. Fuzzer report the issue, fix them. Otherwise, it's going to block in the fuzzer. So some of the issues are not that significant, but there are still some high severity issues discovered. And lastly, as I mentioned, we are experimenting static analysis. So we tried 2 tools, CodeQL for variant analysis and pattern analysis. For example, in the Bluetooth stack, it's very typical that you have a fixed size buffer that allocated either on stack or global or on the heap that you iterate through the buffer, and there's outbound read operation, outbound write happens there. So we developed CodeQL queries to cover that areas, and that query were able to discover both new issues and also rediscover the issues that we found by manual code reviews. And the other one is CLE. We were trying to build a formal verification for some of the Bluetooth component. I would say the result is mixed. So we have some success, like we're finding new issues, reproducing existing issues. However, to get it into our continuous integration pipeline is actually quite challenging, just because you have to make invasive change to the build, which takes a lot of engineering effort to get through code reviews from the engineering team. And the path explosion and function pointers also got into our way when we're trying to apply form verifications. Well, still, it's a good tool. It's just you have to use it for the right target. From here, I will hand over to Rishika, talking about our bugs and exploits.
Thank you. So these are some of the critical and high findings. We have a bunch of moderates as well, which we are not listed here. But if you see, like, there's various components, and there were critical in the third row, which you can read. I guess I have heard in a lot of talks here, like, people are complaining how slow Android is in patching. We will talk about why Bluetooth was specifically a complex target in terms of patching in the later slides, but all the issues are fixed now. If you could be impacted, please take the latest patches which are provided in the Android Security Bulletin. The general process for everything what we find in the Android Red team is when the bug is filed, we work with the feature team, in this case Bluetooth, and then patch the vulnerability or provide the patch to the partners first. And then it goes through a process of testing and regressions, and if there are feedback which partners come back with, and then eventually when everything is good to go, it is included in the Android Security Bulletin, and it is required for something called SPL, Security Patch Level. If people are not aware what that is, I'm happy to talk outside after this talk. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Matt.
Okay, so we found a lot of issues actually, so we only showed the critical and highs over here, but we found small issues, and at some stage actually we need to triage them. So yeah, it took some time because it's all about how the, this attack surface, and then how you can reach this code actually, right? The code is just inside of these functions and functions and functions, and these protocols are kind of interconnected together. So it was very difficult to understand how these packets are actually flowing from the link layer or physical layer to these specific components. So all these triaging and understanding on these protocols, then we came up with 2 exploitable bugs. Actually, probably there might be more. The most exploitable bugs we found is actually one of them is actually GATT integer flow. So I'm not so sure anyone actually heard about GATT. It's a kind of new protocol. So you need to understand the BLE first. Actually, BLE is different from, it's kind of same and different from Bluetooth. So there is a Bluetooth Classic that is more of original Bluetooth spec, and BLE is more of a new protocol spec that is targeting more of low energy consumption devices actually. So it transmits a small package actually. The packet size is really small, like 23 bytes or 27 bytes usually, and it can go up to like 447 bytes in payload or something like that. So on the right side there is a protocol stack. So the down there is more of a physical layer, the hardware link layer, and everything is connected through HCI. It's more of interface between this hardware and software. So, and above that, actually, Android has L2 cap layer that is more of standard way to talk to this HCI and lower layer from the this user land side. So there is multiple protocols. What we need to understand is the ATT. ATT is more of transport protocol that I just talked about. There is a transport with all these transmissions, session management, all these things are done. So that is more of a classic or legacy protocol that has some limitations. And EATT is more of improved, enhanced attribute protocol. So with this improvement, actually, for ATT, it could only have one session on the device because it should use a very specific port, and at one time there is only one ATT session going on. So EATT, the specification was written around maybe 2019, so it's a kind of new protocol. So it's more enhanced. It supports more of concurrent transactions, session management. It has a better throughput. So one of the specification is actually MTU flexibility. It means that with ATT, those payloads are really small, 277 bytes max or something. But with EATT, it can go up to, you guess, actually 665, 35. You into 16 max. Anything in Bluetooth, the size is really small because they are used by all these small devices, right? So this UINT 16 max is considered large, actually. So MTU flexibilities are supported by EATT. So GATT, the names are very similar, but it operates upon ATT or EATT, and it provides some structural data. The way how the BLE works, the BLE works, the applications actually use GATT as some kind of database, actually. So that is the easiest way to understand it. The actual concept is more of some services and characteristics. Basically, it's a kind of database. So the remote BLE device write to some database entity, and application layer can read it, or application layer write it, and the remote device might read it, something like that. So we found multiple issues in GATT stack, actually. The fundamental issue is that GATT stack was written for ATT, which was a really old protocol, which had a lot of assumptions, right? So the MTU max is actually very small, like a 400 some bytes. I don't remember the exact number. It's really small, so there is no way you can offload all these code paths. So there are a lot of calculations going on, but there is no way to offload it. So at the time, GATT stack was secure. So you do a lot of code review there or fuzzing, it will never crash, or you will never find any issues. So if you file those bugs, those are more of some concerns, but will never be an issue. But GATT stack is introduced. So they just plugged GATT stack just under EATT under GATT. So everything is just merged together. Now suddenly, all those secure code became unsecure because all these assumptions are actually wrong. So we filed, there are too many issues. Like a GATT inside, there are all these code that uses MTU value as a calculating, in calculating the buffer size, they are all vulnerable. So we instead of filing all those bugs for each one of those, we just put them together as one. The first one, GATT process, and the other one is some more specific cases. We separate them as different CVEs. So you can go into the patch link and you can see how these are actually fixed. The fixes are really easy, actually, just the integer overflow check, that will be fine. And all these issues are actually patched right now. So we can go a little bit deeper into how this vulnerability works. It's kind of tricky to exploit this, actually. From the attacker side, usually some headphones or some whatever this attacker devices, if they try to make a connection to the target is an Android device, actually, which has this vulnerable stack. And when you are making EATT connection, actually, you just set the MTU to this large value, FFEB, it's enough to offload something. So now the attacker device actually sends this specific request, in this case, GATT client request, read multi. It means you read multiple entities from the GATT server. Then next, actually, when the response is built from the build read multi-response function, actually, so the MTU passed from the attacker is directly used for calculating the buffer size. Then it's used for MCPY. So, but the actual source buffer is actually attribute from the GATT entity. So this is another example. It looks very similar. It has same pattern. Client request is different. In this case, it's read by group type, and GATT handler is a different function, but it has same bug, actually. It just overflows 16-bit unsigned integer. So now we have some bug. Usually our engagement involves some demo. So mostly, sometimes we can come up with a full demo, but this one is kind of short time period that we had, just 2 months. And after we triaging everything, we only left maybe 2 or 3 weeks. But still we need to deliver something actually, right? So just from the attacker's perspective. So one hurdle that we saw is actually Scudo. So Android userland binary is all embedded with Scudo. And this is more of a memory allocator with some security embedded with it, right? So to understand Scudo, basically it's just guard pages between these actual allocations. And Scudo header contains some checksum. And the checksum is installed when the allocation happens, and it has some secret value and XOR or something, and it's something you can't guess from the attacker's perspective. So we needed to overcome this actually. So there is an upper bar and the bar on the bottom. When the overflow happens, BT header, and there are some reserved bytes, 13 bytes, and we could heap overflow, and we could override some Scudo header, but there are some fields that actually control the Scudo header, but unluckily, we couldn't control that field in this case. Kind of, we had to bypass this, actually. So I don't think there is a true Scudo bypass without a memory leak, actually. But there are some tactics you can use, actually, right? So usually this Scudo checksum happens through Scudo free. So when something is freed, it checks whether those Scudo header has been tampered or not, right? Then if we minimize these Scudo free calls, maybe we can have better chances of successing this exploit. The other tactic is kind of simple, just a retry. So there was another incident, a blue flag incident before, actually. They reported 30 to 50% success rate for one exploit attempt, but they could just repeat those things and they could actually raise the overall success rate. The good thing is that Bluetooth service always restart when it crashes. So if your exploit attempt fails, then you can just restart and you can just retry again. And the other thing that you need to consider is when you overwrite the memory, you need to consider the size of the overwrite, the memory allocations. This Scudo memory allocator behavior is like they allocate similar size chunk in same slot, actually, right? So in this case, usually the allocated sizes are really small, 0x10 to 0x20 bytes. We can overwrite. And in same slot, there are 3 different data structures are happening. We found it during after multiple experiments actually. Just looking into the heap and what kind of memories are corrupt, then we found those actually. So the first group is actually V-pointer. There are a lot of V-pointer. Because V-pointer is really small, they are allocated in this memory slot. And the other memory type is a semaphore T. This one is also small. If you overwrite this, then there is no effect or deadlock or Scudo error. So it's not a good thing. So third one is actually listen node T. So this one is actually contains a linked list of this response package. So if you can overwrite this, and actually you can leak some memory because these are actually pointing to the memory that contains some data structure can be returned to the client. So if you overwrite VPTR, actually you can execute something. So list node T, using list node T, there are some possibilities of leaking some SRR, the memory content leading to SRR bypass. Then we ran out of time, but we had some success. We will show you what we could leak later in the demo. So basically, Scudo bypass we had was the race between the Scudo free and RCE, right? There are multiple data structure you could override, 3 different types. Which one is, we basically override all of them maybe, then we are waiting which one is called first. So by sending multiple malicious requests, the success rate of VPTR corruption, we achieved like a 60 to 70% actually at the end. So this is some diagram that shows the overall concept. Those bars are like just heap. And there are multiple corruptions happening during the exploit phase, actually corruption number 1 and corruption number 2 and 3. Number 1 is the case where you override V-pointer. Then you construct the fake V-pointer, then you can achieve a code execution very easily. Corruption number 2 is when you are overriding something different, like a semaphore-T or others, actually. And pseudo-free happens, then it aborts. Then it means the Bluetooth will crash. Corruption number 3 is actually overriding list node T. In this case, you can possibly leak some memory content. So this is the attack chain. So there are some assumptions because we don't have like a month of time to develop this, actually. So the first assumption is that devices are paired together. So the bug itself can be exploited without pairing, actually. So because EATT, MTU setup happens in really early age, but you can actually hijack some legitimate EATT connection, and you can actually inject those MTU value. Then maybe you can trigger it. So the other good thing is that ATT has a more relaxed security level, and you can actually use ATT to write some writable GATT entity and setting up some payload over there. And the other assumption is more of an ASR bypass. So it's totally, it can be its own topic. So we just assume that if we have ASR bypass, what you can achieve. It's more of just demonstrating this bug is exploitable. So this is actual demo. So we can show, let me see. I can make a full screen. So on the left side is the actual exploit code, actually showing some memory bytes or this sending, and the right side is the screen from the Frida. So we just hooked the build read multi-response, which is the vulnerable function, and we are just showing what actually is happening over there. So left side, we are doing some kind of heap spraying, just we write some GATT entity, then we read it multiple times. Then because there are some lags, right? So you remember that ATT, the EATT, MTU can be set to very low value, then there are some lags, so you can actually achieve some heap spraying. Oh, so the same thing. So we are doing ACR bypass experiment here. So we are just doing some heap spraying. So yeah, this is just we did heap spraying. We are running the next script. In this case, this is list node corruption happening. So this is actually sending the high MTU value that triggers the vulnerability. And this is more experimented than we could see that this MCPY up there, this function, MCPY, is called from the build response packet, the vulnerable function. And you can see that the source, source memory bytes, actually it contains Scudo header over there. So there are some possibilities that actually using this to bypass Scudo or bypass SCR, but we didn't continue that much upon that area. So this is actual exploit attempt with some assumptions. So we just copy V-pointer. So we are assuming we leaked it after setting it up from the memory. So we are using that address and sending the exploit, setting up the high MTU value. Then usually half and half, Scudo free is called, and abort, right? Then we will show you, you can try again, right? With Bluetooth service crashes. Then this is second attempt with different V-pointer value. We set up all this memory layout actually. So, and sending exploit with a high MTU value. So yeah, it needs some time actually. So system function has been executed down there. So we will investigate how this VPTR corruption happened actually. That is a line that we put with Frida showing the system has been executed on specific port with the ROP gadget actually. So that is the part where pointer corruption happens. So that is the original content from the pointer target that we corrupted. It has actually binder pointer. So we corrupted this function pointers to our location. So that is the original value that we corrupted. We overrode like 3 bytes. And actually, we could change the control to our system function. Now we can connect to the Bluetooth vector. Yeah, you can connect. And we have my Bluetooth. Yeah, you can run command as Bluetooth user, pwd, and process, and ID. So you can do everything you could do actually here. So that's it for this demo. So. Yeah, thank you actually. So yeah, I wish we could do the SR bypass and everything, but yeah, so it's all this time issue. So so we have next vulnerability. This one is also very interesting. So let me see. Okay, how can I make it full screen? Okay, so this is AVDT vulnerability. This one is really interesting, even though it needs some pairing. So the EATT doesn't need pairing. So AVDTP, the vulnerability happens over Bluetooth Classic, not BLE. So AVDTP protocol is used for high quality audio and video playback actually. So you have some fancy, the latest these headphones or something, or Bluetooth audio in your car, it probably might be using AVDTP. So this is the vulnerability actually. So it looks quite complicated actually. So so I can explain one by one. AVDTP MSGIND. This function is actually is for processing AVDTP package. So whatever comes through the second parameter pbuff, and those are directly comes from the peer device, right? So you can control the content over here. But all this sanitization is already done on the down level, so you can't change some offset or some nasty stuff. It doesn't happen. So we can. It has some solid content, but the contents are interpreted in the wrong way here, right? So down there, the p pointer is passed to some macro that just extract the SIG value, SIG value over there. And it is used for some comparisons between some SIG types. SIG is basically what kind of operation it's doing. There are 2 SIG types, basically. One is discover, so just discovering some devices. The other one is get cap, so just getting what kind of capabilities those devices have, right, or the Android device has. Actually, the peer devices, usually the audio devices, right? Then the thing is that the SIG value is from the peer device. So the assumption is that there is one field from PCCB. PCCB is more of a session structure, session object. So if you make one session from the audio device to Bluetooth, one PCCB will be constructed. And out of those fields, there is a pproc data field. That is just, I don't know why they chose this design concept, but the pproc data is just a temporary pointer. So whenever Android device sends some request to peer device, they use pproc data as some temporary pointer that will be used for storing some response. But in this case, the pproc data can point to all kind of different structures, right? Then it just look at the SIG value from the peer device and just use it as typecast to some field. So we can. That means that some one data type can be interpreted into different data type. And the fix is that usually we found that the mitigations usually some integer flow is really easy if you are employ some int_sun or some boundary checker. Then the sanitizers, then you can actually mitigate those. And but this is more of a logical issue. These are very hard to mitigate using some mitigations. But luckily, it seems like we tested empty enable the empty can just operate upon these memory corruptions. It could actually be effective actually mitigating in exploitation phase. So it's a good news. Or you could just apply the patch. Patch is really simple. Just compare the original request with this incoming SIG value and just bail out if it's, they are not same. So I can go through some details how it can be exploited. And from the attacker side on the left, there is headphone or some malicious device you paired, right? So someone gave you some headphones or speakers. They might have some backdoor and they could do this kind of attack, right? So the target is an Android device. So they are pairing and they are paired that they are trying to set up the stream, right? So the device on the right actually tries to send a discover request. So it wants to discover the device. And the pproc data will be pointing to specific field into the SCV data structure. Now the response coming from the attacker device, then it will be using that field to fill out this response. So there is nothing wrong here. But now the target device is sending this get cap request, probably want to get some capability, this configuration from the attacker. And the pointer pproc data is pointing to a peer cap member of SCV structure. But now the attacker just simply can send a discover response, actually, right? Then the type confusion happens in the same function. The PCCB pproc data, the temporary pointer is actually pointing to wrong data type here, peer cap. But actually, it is interpreted as a SAB info, the different type on the bottom. Then type confusion happens. But this bug is really interesting because the next, if you go back, if you look at the SCV data structure here, the next data structure from this peer cap is actually A2DP list, which is a linked list, which is really useful for exploitation. So this is really interesting and yeah. Maybe just lucky, but yeah, kind of useful actually, right? So our tactic was just overriding this A2DP list. It's too easy, basically. So if you look at the A2DP list the data structure, in very convenient way, it has a function pointer, and you could just override the free CV, and just then you have this code execution. So our tactic was just heap spraying for some predictable address to bypass SRR. Now we have some system gadget and we just construct some fake list structure, what is the fake A2DP list data structure with free CV just pointing to system function. And if list free CV is called, then the code execution happens. We wanted this specific A2DP list to be pointed at this specific location. And we send package with this fake structure so we can get lucky and these things. When freeing node, probably this free CB will be called, the system will be called. And this is some graphic representation how this heap spray object and everything can be constructed. So everything can be constructed within this specific data structure. So it's really convenient. But as we said, we didn't fully achieve SR bypass. But the thing is that this assumes that the paired device, so paired device, if you have some malicious audio or video device, this can possibly happen. So the other caveat that we had is actually we couldn't find really good heap spraying gadgets yet during 2 weeks of the exploit attempt. So just filling out Bluetooth memory was kind of challenging. So we just artificially made those heap spraying here. So those are some caveats, but all this type confusion and free CV pointer override, it happened actually. So here's the actual demo. So we are just running Frida. Usually we use Frida to just hook. It's very convenient. Then we just gather the system address. That is one address we need. Then from there, the exploit script, we just put that address. So if we have SR bypass, we can just use them too. So now there is a kind of heap spraying target. It's all null bytes. So after heap spraying, this pawn.sh, we are sending multiple scripts, the big package, and there are some devices to pair. So Bumble is the name of the attacking device. Bumble is just a toolkit name too. So we are sending this heap spraying package, all these attempts to heap spray. So we want these specific patterns to happen in specific location. Yeah, that is original discover response. Yeah, there is a heap spray payload that we constructed. So this is more heap spray attempt we constructed. Yeah, chunk allocated at specific location. That is what we wanted. So specific memory patterns happen at specific locations. So everything is set up. Then the A to DP list was original value was like a 8D something 5D. Then it was overwritten with our exploit to very specific value 20,000, right? So that is more of exploit part, overriding part done. Then we need to trigger the free operation. So we need to play something, the YouTube video. Then when YouTube video ends, the free operation will be triggered and it will just execute the shellcode. The shellcode is probably running the NC ID and just run the shell actually over the air. Yeah. I think that is for all these bug and exploits. I will pass it to Rishika for mitigations.
Actually, I will talk about mitigations. So one benefit that we work as Android team is that we have very close relationship with the feature team. So we work very close with them on fixing the issues. Sometimes we help them code review the fixes. Of course, we only code review the security part. We don't want disrupt their functional part. But as Rishika mentioned, that Bluetooth mitigation is actually quite challenging. Remediation is quite challenging. There's a couple things. Many issues are very straightforward. Many fixes are actually just one-liner fix. However, just to verify this issue is the JIT is reproducible takes a lot more effort than fixing the issue. So I got lots of questions, like why don't you just go blindly fix the issue and call it done? So here's the problem is that when we release a patch, if it's a security patch, it needs to go to all the security bulletins, and that bulletin has lots of overhead. So we want to make sure every issue that goes to the bulletin is really a security issue. We just cannot blindly fix the issue without talking about the severities. So that's the biggest challenge. And the other challenge is, especially for Bluetooth, it's such a complex stack, and regression happens. So there's many cases that the feature team has to test if there's any regressions caused by the simple fix. A one-liner fix can have very complex regression result, and sometimes you cannot even identify where this result comes from. So it takes a lot of time for them to verify and testing the fix. And that's for remediations. And after that, we talk about the mitigations. So how can we mitigate all similar issues? And I think one biggest thing is the bounds checks. Bluetooth use lots of buffer operations, and it will be very nice to have built-in bounds checks. And type confusion is probably hard. That requires you need to cache the type and not trust whatever attacker sends. It's very specific. But in general, we're working on with them to bake all the checks into the very basic high-level construct so that, for example, you have a buffer instead of just raw pointers, and then every time you access that, you get the buffer length checked and get the buffer index checked. And lastly, about the hardening effort, how can we, moving forward with the future team, like how do we prevent this thing from happening? One thing is that we can definitely should do is proactively finding all of them before they actually get discovered by external attackers. We can do more red teaming exercise, but our resources are limited. We can do more static analysis, but they're not very easy to be integrated into CI pipelines. And the feature team is working on better interop tests running regularly, so hopefully to catch any regressions. And fuzzing helps a lot here is that it helps us catch all the regressions once the code is in. Usually the fuzzer will discover the regressions in just second day as it's running there. And of course, going forward, the refactors for better memory safety, that's always a topic. How can we do memory safety better? The easy approach of one thing that's easily available would be compiler mitigation. There are still implications, performance, overhead, memory overhead, lots of stuff that you need to consider. Another way is, safer language, maybe Rust, or maybe some just C++, but safer types. These are all in consideration, but I cannot speak on behalf of Bluetooth feature team talking about what's their roadmap, but these are basically all in the considerations. Excuse me. Yeah, with that, this is the end of our content. Any questions?
I'll just quickly add, scan the code if you want to read our blogs. There are not many, but we're trying to get more there.
Right now, we don't have Bluetooth content on the blog yet, but at least you can find our contact. So if you want to email us, there's the email there. But any other questions, if anybody's interested?
Thank you very much. Please come to the microphones if you have questions for our speakers. Well,
if not,
I have one.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I was wondering, you mentioned 6 likely CLE bugs in the beginning in the methodology. Is it just time constraint that you haven't had the chance, or what's the story behind those?
It's pretty much time constraint. Yeah, we cannot spend more time because of our schedule. So we try our best to cover the most important or high priority areas.
Okay. And follow up, the CodeQL queries, do you intend on publishing them?
I believe we have some in our internal repos, and we are looking into publishing them, but it takes time.
Okay. It would be appreciated, I think. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you for the talk.
Thank you.